Thank you very much for whoever is joining us on our Facebook for this conversation series session. I am here with, my name is Faris Farasadi, City of Overland Park, and I'm here with Councilman Scott Hamblin with the City of Overland Park. We both serve on City Council. If you have been to our conversation series, you know that I am lucky enough to team up with Councilman Hamblin in reviewing many issues that comes our way, and we constantly try to educate and inform the public about the issues and basically explain our positions and the reasoning and the logics that we have. We used to have the third member of the team, former council member Gina Burke, and Ms. Burke has stepped down from her position due to family reasons, and we wish her the best of luck. So the topic of the conversation today is this discussion that we have over the pay freeze for first responders. As you are aware, the City of Overland Park implemented a number of cost-cutting measures, including hiring 200 part-time employees and applying a pay freeze to everybody, including first responders. Our mutual position was that at least this action should be reversed for the first responders, considering the level of stress and the level of immense exposure that they have going out there and serving and protecting us, and being also exposed to this virus and being in the middle of this battle against the viral pandemics. They don't have the luxury of staying home and doing their job. Therefore, our mutual position was that let's not stress them out by essentially cutting their pay. So I'm going to let Councilman Hamblin continue this with what he wants to mention. But the first attempt that we had at this to reverse it for first responders at the City of Overland Park for the next 2 months, which would have costed only $100,000, was rejected. Councilman Hamblin, and former council member Burke voted for have it discussed, and the rest of the council didn't even want to discuss it. They didn't even vote to discuss it. So the second action we took was to propose a hazard pay, and we will see how they react to it on April 20th. Councilman, thank you very much for being here, and we are listening to, I understand that you have been in conversation with the first responders. You are actually the one who brought this to the table with a lot of knowledge and first-hand conversation with the first responders. Would you please enlighten us with that level of information, and also let us know what you think? Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you, Dr. Farasadi, for having me on here with you. So this started a couple weeks ago. I don't know the exact probably night, but apparently an email went out to our city staff, including our first responders, stating that they were going to have a scheduled and agreed upon yearly pay, basically an inflation pay raise plus step increases. They work in a process of where every so many years you spend in the job, you get extra pay for the time you've been there. But they started reaching out to me. This was probably 10:30 at night when they started reaching out to me. This is before I'd heard of it from any other source. I obviously agreed with them that this was not the time at all for this kind of a knee-jerk reaction to this situation. We were at the time maybe 2 weeks into this pandemic, and so I started reaching out the next day. I didn't get very far. A lot of this crisis management is being handled internally, basically from the city manager's office and the mayor's office, which is somewhat understandable. It is in their job description to handle it. I was a little surprised by their lack of willingness to take input and opinion from the elected officials that people are reaching out to. So from there, Dr. Farasati and I proposed that we simply reverse this for the first responders. I mean, ideally, we'd like to reverse it from everybody. We gathered there was no appetite for that, but at the very least, this needed to be reversed for the first responders. I mean, every day we're reading in the news about first responders being quarantined, being infected. In New York City's had a couple of them die. I mean, this is a serious issue, and they're on the front lines. They don't have the option to sit at home like we do. So not only did I completely back them 100% on paying them what we promised to pay them, and I think it's important to bring up that they got this notification 2 days before that this pay was supposed to go into effect. So I've got many emails, as I'm sure everyone else has, of not only the officers themselves, but their families emailing saying, we counted on this money. We count on it every year. They needed it. Some of them, I talked to one of them who said, we stocked up on supplies so that my family was ready when I had to be quarantined. And we were counting on that money as supplementing some of those purchases. So, it's a real threat. I went through the numbers, we did the math, we got some information from the city, and like Dr. Farasati said, this was a total cost of $100,000. Generally, in city council, we're talking about millions, if not hundreds of millions. This is the absolute smallest amount I've seen. Well, I say discussed, but they rejected the discussion. So from there, that's obviously disappointing to us, to the first responders, to the majority of the public that has reached out to us. So that's kind of how this got started. And as Dr. Farasati said, we're going to propose a hazard pay. I mean, I think I've said it several times. It's getting more and more disappointing every day as I read the news about many other cities that are doing extra things for their first responders, whether it be hazard pay or even just as simple as, giving them extra vacation time off. Those are all things that could come up in the discussion, but we were rejected to even have the discussion about what we could do for our first responders, which was pretty insulting to them, and obviously, I think a little irrational, so we'll see where this goes with the hazard pay. Oh, can't hear you there.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I just muted myself for a second. So I think it's pretty obvious that if we look at this from different perspectives, like perspectives that you explained, or even financial burden on the city, it's a negligible cost. So when we look at the conversations that we heard on April 6th on not listening to our motion and not even wanting to discuss it, I believe there was a level of fear involved that the logics behind it wouldn't hold. So why do we even want to discuss it? When you look at this, there is nobody who would argue that the first responders are in the middle of this pandemic. As a matter of fact, let me, if I could ask you, let me show you this title by Daily News. That, do you see it? Do you have it?
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, two more NYPD officers were dead, and the number of sick officers right now in that city nears about 20%. So now we are having this in the belly of conversation that some certain council members are saying that it really is not that much different from their daily job. And I really challenge that logics, because when was in their daily job description that they have to be exposed to a virus that would take 20% sick and people start dying. That kind of justification that we heard after they rejected discussion about the pay freeze reversal, and now we are being told that, oh, it's the hazard pay that you put forward is not going to work because their job is difficult anyways. That notion is, in my opinion, completely groundless. What do you think, Councilman?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a situation where if they're infected or even suspected to be infected, this is a situation where they're going into a 14-day or whatever the requested quarantine time is. A lot of it is time that they're spent away from their family. Well, nowhere in their job description, I think, does it say, oh, you're going to go on a basic call and all of a sudden not see your family for 14 days and possibly be infected with something that can threaten your life. So it's absurd to call that just a basic function of their job. I think I can speak for both of us when I say we reject that completely. And so did the first responders. I mean, they put out plenty of stuff saying how offensive that was to them. And one of the worst things about it is, to me, is I'm still, stuck on the amount that we were simply talking about $100,000. Our proposal was to continue to reverse the decision to take away their promised pay for the next 60 days. And then we revisit it at that time. So we're talking, like Farah said, basically a negligible cost to the city. I mean, we're talking about a cost that's almost within the reach of a GoFundMe account. And to tell me a city with a budget of $300 million and $50 million in a reserve fund can't spend $100,000 for their first responders on the front line. I mean, that's just it's completely illogical. And to be quite frank, there's other stuff I've read in the news where that's quite concerning, because there's other statements where council members have said, oh, well, 2 weeks ago, we were in excellent financial condition. Excellent financial condition 2 weeks ago, and now we don't have $100,000 for our first responders. So that's concerning in itself, that if you can't recognize that we have a problem, if we can't afford this, then, the first problem was solved. The first thing you got to do to solve any problem is recognize there is one, and I don't see that being recognized yet. I
fully agree. I hear a lot of that coming from my family when I disagree that something is a problem, and they usually tell me, "Oh, Paris, you got to realize there is a problem before you make a move to fix it." That's a mechanism for me to deny the whole thing. It's a very well-known mechanism to a lot of guys. And again, also disheartening that, like, chairman of a public safety committee is, instead of supporting the first responders, is coming out with this statement. If it would come from somebody who had no idea about what they are supposed to go through, maybe it would hurt a little bit less. So what about, in the spirit of I interviewing you, what about the conversation we heard on April 6th, that it's essentially, we are powerless, it's all in the jurisdiction of the city manager, and you guys have no jurisdiction, therefore you shouldn't talk about it. Before you start answering, let me put to this structure together for whoever is watching this, that we have a city council and mayor, and they are the only elected officials. We are the only ones that people vote on. City manager and the rest of the staff are employees, basically. And we are supposed to be the decision-making, policy-making body based on what we think is good for Overland Park. The policies are supposed to come from elected body of officials, and the legitimacy of these policies comes from elected officials. But we had a level of discussion that because city manager has the authority to change the salary scale of the employees, now you as the governing body should not even discuss this, which, again, before you start, I wanted to explain that structure for people who, so they would know that other than council members and the mayor, nobody is elected. So
Right.
would you please elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, it's, and that's what I said on April 6th, and that's the argument they made when they rejected to even discuss this issue. Is they said this is a call from the city manager and no one else. Basically, not allowing any elected official, other than most likely the mayor, to have any input on this. So as I said in the meeting, it's like, well, okay, I understand. Okay, you can say that the city manager can take care of day-to-day operations and is responsible for salary structure and all that. But the idea that he would want no input from the elected officials, we're the ones that are getting contacted by the first responders. We're the ones getting contacted by the public. You don't even want to hear what we're being told, what we're hearing, what our concerns are. We can't even have that discussion. I reject that. The other thing that I had a hard time with was comments made that, it's time to be team players. And, Dr. Farasati and I need to just join them in this lead from behind. Let's just step back and let the city manager do whatever he pleases. And that's not a knock on our city manager. I'm sure he's made some other fantastic decisions. But this idea that we completely abandon our convictions and what we ran on office for, and join them just for the sake of unity when we know what we're joining is wrong, is not at all what I feel we were elected to do. And so I had a real problem with that notion too, that we just need to get along, even though we know the position they're taking is wrong.
Thank you. I fully agree. I mean, it is true that we have a mechanism of staff management and human resources, which is headed by our city manager. But if we, with a united voice, have told our city manager that this is the place that we want to see this policy established, I am very, very optimistic that he would have listened very carefully. So to say.
Yeah, I would be absolutely shocked if the city manager was directly asked, would you like the opinion of the council? And his answer was no.
No, that is well. And also then I asked if basically, I wanted to know what was the level of involvement of Mayor Gerlach in this. And I was told that he basically came out and said in the email that I agree with it. So here we have another issue, that there is a major policy being implemented and the council is completely unaware of it until the policy is implemented. So I never heard, and I know that you, councilman, never heard about, I am moving forward to do this. Do you guys have an opinion? Do you guys want to say anything? In case of the first responders, we were never told until the employees reached us. Reached you, actually.
Yeah, and to this day, I've still not seen an official email come from the mayor or the city manager's office advising us that they took this action. They don't deny it, but the only confirmation and information I have received was from the first responders themselves. And as a councilman, it's for lack of a better term, it's embarrassing to get called by constituents or city employees or whoever you're representing and have absolutely no idea what they're talking about because you haven't been informed. And that's just the way this is being operated right now. It's all being operated out of the city manager and the mayor's office. And I mean, we could get into theoretical debates, but that is one of the criticism of the types of government we have set up is it does allow a mayor and a city manager to kind of censor the council on information, but it is what it is. We with the right communication we can avoid that, and that's the type of leadership that we should be seeing at this time.
It's very interesting for me. A few months ago, Scott, before you joined the council, but I believe you were following the council, the city council debated about 30-40 minutes if a lady should have 8 chickens or 7 chickens on her property or not. And if that was against the code, if that wasn't against the code, and if that bring a health issue or not. Otherwise, when there is a conversation about chickens, we are supposed to vote. It comes on the agenda, and we are given the chance to talk for 40 minutes over 6 or 8 chickens. And when there is a pay cut involved with everybody, all of the staff, when 200 on a part-time employees are fired, when our first responders are being disheartened and the morale is going down, then it's not the time for city council to give an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even talking about the same caliber discussion. Like you said, we've been all over the approval, or more like the disapproval of backyard chickens. But a situation as dire as this, where all other cities are at least taking some form of action or not cutting pay, that's the biggest key right there. I have yet to see another city cut the pay. Most of them are adding some kind of incentive, whether it be vacation time or hazard pay, and we're taking it away. And this comes directly from a lot of the first responders I've talked to. Is they say this is a bigger issue. This is a financial hit that we take, that we relied on. This also reflects on the morale. It has an effect on the morale of the different forces, because they feel it's a show of how their city feels about them. And then the other one is we have a shortage of first responders as it is. And another big concern is like, well, how are we going to recruit now when the first thing that our city does is put their foot on our throat in the time of crisis? How many people are going to want to work for us when they have other choices out there? So there's a lot in play here, over this $100,000.
And having that said, when we are about 50 officers short, there is actually a new study that our police force has done. And once again, I believe that was sent to certain people and we never saw it, but we're going to get a copy of it pretty soon, which puts our shortage of officers somewhere about 50. And that's not a good news for those 50 new recruits, that in the next pandemic, in the next national emergency, the first one who are going to go down in pay is you guys. I also wanted to ask you, because which other jurisdictions have enacted hazard pay that you are aware of?
Well, I know Sedgwick County, which would be Wichita, just did it this week. And then there's been other various ones around the country. I think Sedgwick is the closest. Leawood gave a time off award, essentially. I think they earn an extra vacation pay to be used maybe sometime either during the crisis or after the crisis. I don't know the details of it, but it's a show of support, and it's giving them something. You don't necessarily have to have money to give a time off award. I know in the federal government, that's what they use a lot of time. When budget's tight, you use time off awards. So those are all options that are on the table if we could at least even have the discussion.
So our proposal, after we were defeated to reverse the pay cut, now we are proposing $500 a month for the duration of pandemic per first responder. And we have asked that to be on the council agenda for April 20th. I haven't heard a yes or no back yet. So we will see, and we ask all of the OP residents, if they find $500 a month for a first responder, something that is logical for a city which has $50 million in reserve funds, if you find that to be justified, if you would see it that if you had a first responder, you wanted his or her family to be somewhat financially taken care of and not at least stressed out, I encourage you to call your council members, to call the mayor or to call the city council or email us at governingbody@opkansas.org and express your point of view, or simply talk to the media about this, because we need your voice. We are trying to do it, but the more you express your opinion, I believe it would influence the opinion of my colleagues on city council. Do you agree with that, Councilman?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The more people we can get to reach out to them, I mean, let's be honest, this is a no-brainer. They have to know it. You know, I'll just be blunt. They're hiding behind the city manager. So, you know, send those emails, call them out, bring them to the front line, bring them to the discussion that Dr. Farasati and I are willing to have, force them to lead, and let's have this discussion. And the more people that get involved, I think the better chance we have of that happening.
Okay, we are getting to the limits of the the conversation that we wanted to have in terms of time, but not to leave it without bringing up the topic that is very much beloved by I and you, and that is the topic of tax giveaways. Because at the end of the day, let's be honest, everything is about economy. Your family has a microeconomy, your city has a microeconomy, your state has a economy, and then the nation and everything else. The dollars dictate your power of changing things. So I am going to share with you a screen in terms of when we say the policy of giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to private developers has hurt the financial health of this city. And in a national emergency like this, the fruits of that are showing themselves. The problem comes to the bubble. I want to show you the numbers, people who are watching, so we know what numbers we are talking about. And I want everybody to think about, if these tax dollars were absorbed, or a fraction of them were absorbed, would we be in a much better situation that we wouldn't need to cut the pay for first responders? It's simple math. There is really no politics involved. It's simple math. When you give something away, you are not going to have it now, and you are not going to have it in future to use it. These are saving accounts of the city of Overland Park, which have been depleted because of these dollars being given away to a bunch of luxury apartments and luxury offices, with the notion that if I don't give away these free taxes to them, they will not build it in Overland Park. And everybody who lives in Overland Park knows that this is the most lucrative part of the metro Kansas City. You don't find a better place to build. If there is an area which is blight, both of us, we have said that we approve help for it. But Overland Park simply doesn't have that many blighted areas. It's the fact. So with your permission, Councilman, I'm going to share this screen, and then I'll listen to you in terms of your take on it.
Absolutely.
Do you see this?
Yep.
All right. So this is a summary of the last. This does not, by the way, include the $200 million that were given away in December 2019, by the vote of the mayor, basically. So if I could just take it here. So you have property tax abatements. This is the last 5 years, not including December 2019. $175 million property taxes were abated for these projects. Apartments, constructions, I don't have anything against them unless they are, you know, having too much density going. We have an issue with that, but now we are just talking about impact on the dollars. CID, there is $71 million taxes that in extra sales tax, they will collect and hand it over to the developer. And you might never understand it, because you go to a place and instead of 9%, you pay 11%, 10%, and you never figure it out. You may not even look at your receipt, but that's money out of your pocket, which goes to the pocket of the developer. Tax increment financing, which is postponing the taxes that was supposed to be collected, $154 million. EDRB tax exemptions. The list really is quite a bit. You know, you just can't ignore it in any shape. Look at this, sales tax savings of $16.5 million. We are talking that City of Overland Park is very, very dependent on sales tax exemptions. We are desperate because the Oak Park Mall closed, And yet we are handing over $16.5 million to a bunch of luxury apartments or office builders and stuff like that. So of course we're not going to have it now. You take it, Scott.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, the tax abatement, you know, I'm in complete agreement with Dr. Farasati. Look at our property values around here. An area where it's $500,000 an acre isn't an undesirable area that people aren't going to want to build, and people are going to want to put commercial property on. So, you know, the idea that Overland Park has nothing to offer but tax abatements is just simply not the case. We got the best schools around. You know, many other reasons other than just because we give our money away to them. So, you know, there is a debate on that. Will they build it? Will they not? I think, you know, being the most prominent area in the metro, I think it will be built regardless. But when we talk about this sales tax exemption down at the bottom, the 16 million, this is truly just a giveaway, because what this is a sales tax. We basically allow the developer not to pay sales tax on the building materials for their project. So, for instance, if you go to my Facebook page right now, Scott Hamlin for City Council, you'll see an example of one that we passed in between the election and the time that the new elected councilman took office, and it was one where actually, I'm trying to see. Yeah. Anyways, it was one where the developer had already got their tax incentives. They'd finished the process. A lot of the incentives were based off how their retail performed. Retail, as we know, has taken a hit. I don't think it's a mystery. I think we all know a lot of it's gone online. But so they came back afterwards and said, you know what, we really didn't generate the profits we wanted to, since this incentive was based on retail. Can we get a $900,000 sales tax exemption also? And this was an after the fact. And the councilman on our own finance and economic development committee even asked, what's in it for the city? I mean, this is a done deal. What do we get in return? And you know, the reasoning given by the applicant was, well, because we're partners and it's just the right thing to do. So, I mean, if that doesn't define a giveaway, I don't know what does. And being as that is what we're being told is our biggest problem right now is sales tax, I think that is something that has to end immediately. And I think it's also important to mention about this list. This is the last 5 years. Most of these are in existence for a lot longer. So you're not seeing all of the tax incentives that are currently active. You know, if one's 9 years old, it's still active, and you know that money is still being deferred, but it's not on this list. This is just the last 5 years. So that's another, I think, important part to mention about this list. But
it's just that we didn't know how much depressive we want to make it. Last 5 years is already pretty, you know, questionable, so to speak. And let's think about future. Like, okay, well, some people argue that this is, in terms of deferred taxes, this is the taxes that we never had. Therefore, don't worry about it. You are giving away the taxes that you don't have right now. Otherwise, a parcel is paying, for example, $50,000 taxes right now as it is. Developer is going to put a $200 million structure on it, and is going to pay that $50,000 base tax for the next 15 years. Don't worry about it, because right now is a piece of land, and if that $200 million structure wouldn't be put on it because of a construction project coming forward to OP, you will never collect that tax. So don't worry about it. Well, how is your argument against that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's several ways I look at that. I mean, the first, and I think we both said it, is this idea that you're not losing anything because it's money you never had is absurd. I mean, it's the same thing as ripping up your paycheck and saying, well, it's, you know, even though I worked 2 weeks for it, it's money I never had, so I really didn't lose anything. The other way to look at it is, well, it's a piece of land and it's not generating very much revenue, and we don't think anyone's going to build on it. So let's guarantee that let's approve a tax abatement on it and guarantee that we don't collect anything on it for the next 20 years. How does that make sense? You know, I'd rather take the chance that something gets developed and we collect something than to automatically say, well, you know, not generating much now, just guarantee it generates nothing for 20 years. I mean, that's kind of an absurd,
right,
way of looking at it.
Right. It's just all comes back on the center hypothesis that overland park is only good enough if I don't have to pay my taxes. If I am a developer and I want to put 600 units, if I want a developer with brokerage and I'm going to put $1.8 million in turning a golf course to a concrete conglomerate that nobody wants, it all comes after the central hypothesis that overland park has nothing to offer other than tax giveaways. And either it is that, or all these rankings that we get, best place to raise a family, best place to go to work, best place to do this, to do that, or it's that. Or which one is it? If it's a great place to raise a family, to live, to work, to go to school, to be safe, then the quality of life exists, and that is the best area for development. That's the best place you could put your money down in real estate. If it doesn't, if overland park is in such a terrible shape that we have nothing to offer, we are really blighted, and if we don't give away taxes, nobody wants to build a square foot in this city, then we have much bigger issues.
Yeah,
we have much deeper issues.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that I heard, well, I still hear, but especially before I was elected and campaigning, was people were reaching out, you know, and they've caught on to this. This has been going on for an extended time. It's had, you know, our economic strength as a city has been declining constantly. So the experiment is failing.
Failed.
Yeah. And most of the people are saying, you know, stop giving the money away. And another piece of that is a lot of what I was being told is overwhelmingly the people didn't like the project. They didn't care for the project that they were giving the money away for. So there was kind of two things there. It was, you know, do we need more apartments, and do we need to build them on our own dime? So, you know, kind of a two-piece thing there.
It's like you told the renovator, I really don't like my kitchen to be renovated, and you wake up Saturday morning, he's hammering in your kitchen and demanding payment, basically. Many of these projects, just like you said, people don't even want it. Because these are subject to rezoning, and they object, and we constantly overrule them. And a lot of them are not even supported by the master plan for the city. But Scott, let's not get away too much from the topic of hazard pay and first responders. Do you have any closing comments focused on the upcoming discussion on hazard pay?
You know, I just urge people, you know, I don't know how much it's going to get publicized. I don't know if it's like, we haven't heard back. Will it officially be on the agenda? So the best thing we can do at this point is, you know, spread the word, tune in, watch, see what people have to say, and reach out and demand that your councilman stop, you know, demand that they lead, that they offer an opinion, that they try and fix this situation, and it's pretty much that simple.
I agree, and I remind everybody that these are talking about a few $100,000. This would not generate multi-million-dollar shortage. we might be in ditch for a certain number because of economy going down. We should have had thought of these rainy days before. We didn't, but now we can't run it on the back of our first responders. I am very sorry that we are putting pressure on the rest of our staff, but we tried to even protect them, and that didn't work. Then we went after first responders, and we are hearing a lot of disagreement from people who should support this. It's very interesting to me that the first group, the same group of people who agreed these taxes to be given away, are the same group of people who disagreed with even having a discussion about reversing the pay cut for first responders. Let's not have so much indoctrinated minds when different items come. Let's not worry about, I gotta keep these, resistance towards things that make sense. Let's think about it logically. At the end of the day, like everybody says, let's think if your son or daughter was a police officer and was supposed to go to the house of this family who are all dealing with COVID-19. Do you want that officer to walk in that situation and be worried about his finances? One of the officers was telling me that, I don't know, every day morning I ask myself, is this the day that I'm gonna contract the virus? And that worry I cannot take away. We cannot take away, but at least I can keep their pay. I don't have that much of extra comments, Councilman. I'm gonna ask you anything, any closing comments, anything?
Nope, that's it. I think, like I said, reach out. I hope you support this. It means a lot to the first responders. It doesn't mean much for our budget. If it does, then, if $100,000 is the financial collapse of Overland Park, then,
we are in much worse situation.
We got problems.
Yeah, and let's remember, we have $50 million reserve funds. We can spend from that. Let's remember, the notion that this is the same scenario at 2008 is absurd. We had a different scenario in 2008. This is a viral pandemic. And by the nature of it is temporary. I don't know how deep the recession is going to be, or if it's going to be a recession. We don't know what happens. But the notion that we heard on April 6th to compare it to 2008, when we were in a much different scenario, is just I don't know with what level of expertise.
Yeah, we were showed a graph on, it was I think a preemptive attack to kind of discourage members from supporting our motion. But we were showed a graph that was, if we stay on our current course for the next 4 years. So essentially implying that this situation of everything being shut down and quarantine is going to continue for 4 years, then we're going to have financial troubles. So, to base it on that and save $100,000 a month into this, because your projections say that if we stay on this course for 4 years, I think that's going a little far.
Thank you, Councilman Hamblin. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and I wish you and your family the best of the health and all situations. I applaud the level of enthusiasm and energy that you have coming right on the council and getting down to the bottom of very fundamental issues that we deal with. And we have members that I haven't heard a discussion from them at all. And I really very much hope that they look at important things that we are facing now. We need to fix this system for 5 years from now, for 6 years from now, for the next pandemic. Let this be a lesson to all of us, the governing body, the staff, and also the people of Overland Park, that there are issues that we need to face, then we could protect our residents and the future of our kids. I hope that we could continue. I think the next, these are conversation series. We're gonna try to make it a little bit fancier with nicer background and everything in future. And the next time, I think Scott is gonna host me, and eventually down the road, when this pandemic is over, I look forward to a debate session with members of the city council who think the other way. Well, right now we can't have a meaningful debate really, but hopefully in future, when this is over and we are all looking at this as a bad memory, I look forward to having debates so we could get to the bottom of this. Anything else,
Yeah.
Scott? Anything else?
I think that's it. I think our next council meeting is what, April 20th?
That's right.
April 20th, 7:30. So I hope you tune in and watch. And, you know, I would expect that we'll probably host another one of these either immediately or shortly afterwards and discuss where we stand at that point. And I hope you tune in and listen.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.